What's up, guys? Let's talk about postnatal bone growth. This is a process in which we are getting the lengthening of the long bones. If we take a look at this diagram here, what we can see, this is the distal end of the femur, and over here we've got the proximal end of the tibia. So what you'll notice, this structure is the epiphyseal plate. So that's what's shown here, and then it's also shown here. And what we're going to look at are how these different chondrocytes, how they're going to, or the cartilage cells, how they're going to divide. They're going to divide and help to lengthen the bone. Here towards the bottom, we'll get the formation of new bone. What are some of these different zones and what's occurring in each of them? So during step 1, you've got two different regions here. So over here, you've got the resting zone, and then over here we have the growth zone. So here at the resting zone, these different chondrocytes, they are going to be relatively inactive. Once we get to the growth zone or the proliferative zone, we have all these different chondrocytes. So these chondrocytes, they're going to rapidly undergo mitosis, further dividing, lengthening the bone. And then once we move here to step 2 at the hypertrophy zone, so this here is the hypertrophic. Look at the size of these different chondrocytes. They are a lot larger compared to here within the growth zone. So they are getting larger here, and then you can also see these interconnected spaces here between them. So these are the older ones that they start to get bigger, and then we further get into, this is the calcification zone. So over here we get some of the blood vessel invasion, and then some of those different chondrocytes, they are going to die, right? Like we talked about earlier, once they start to secrete that calcium, they become impermeable to the nutrients, and then from there they're going to die. And then you can also see that spicule formation. So these are the spicules that are further coming down. So that leads us to step 4, which is the ossification zone. So we are going to start to get the formation of this new bone. And what we'll have is these different osteoclasts. So these different osteoclasts, they're going to digest these spicules, and we complete through step 4. So let's go ahead and fill out some of this information that's missing over here. So we talked about step 1, the proliferation zone, resting zone, the growth zone. And one thing to make note of here, the cells are going to divide quickly. We talked about the chondrocytes, they are dividing, and the direction in which they are pushing the epiphysis, they are pushing it away from the diaphysis. So during puberty, this is whenever we're going to have the lengthening of these different bones here. And then we talked about the hypertrophic zone, how these chondrocytes, they're going to enlarge, and then we discussed these interconnecting spaces. So their lacunae, it's going to erode, and that's what leads to those large interconnecting spaces that we talked about. Step 3, we mentioned that blood vessel invasion and how these different chondrocytes, they're going to die once they start to secrete that calcium. And then we discussed the digestion of those spicules. And then within step 4, the ossification zone, they are going to be invaded by the marrow elements, and some of those marrow elements, including the osteoblasts and osteoclasts, right? Clasts are going to break down some of that cartilage there, and then the osteoblasts, they're going to help to start to build that bone that's going to be found right in here. Okay, so the last thing to take a look at is before growth and remodeling, and then as well as after growth and remodeling. So one of the things that we want to pay attention to, if you look at the comparison between the two, this is showing that line here of what it looks like before and after. And you can see some of that bone here is going to be resorbed. And so the cells that are going to be involved with this process are going to be those osteoclasts in order to change the shape of the bone.